Round 2 of the FIM Women's Circuit Racing World Championship takes us to Cremona, situated in the Lombardy region, northern Italy, with music at the heart of its culture stretching all the way back to the 12th century. But this weekend we exchanged music for the sound of motorcycles and the World WCR Superpole session. Maria Herrera and Beatriz Nela come into Cremona equal on 45 points at the summit of the championship after taking a win and a second place each 3 weeks ago at Assen. Taking you through this Superpole session, as ever, is Liam Hodgins and Steve English. And Steve, for this session, temperatures have risen this afternoon compared to this morning, and that could throw a few headaches the way of the riders.
Yeah, you can see there almost 50 degrees track temperature here for the WCR class. Shouldn't be that much of a factor with these bikes just because they're not too temperamental really compared to a superbike in the hot temperatures. But for the riders, there is a lot less grip out there compared to this time last year. We've also had a recent test here in Cremona, and the conditions are very different for that as well. So everyone's kind of had to get themselves up to speed in much hotter conditions here for this race weekend. But what's been interesting is straight away a lot of riders were down to the speed they had in the test, so no one's having to really build up into the weekend. They're straight down to speed.
Yeah, they are indeed, and we're speaking to a few riders that really felt positive about the test here a couple of weeks ago. They did say from pre-season testing that the game has really moved on quite a lot. 2 seconds a lap faster they were going, and this morning's session we saw Maria Herrera already down towards her all-time lap record of last year.
Yeah, only a couple of tenths of a second off Carrasco's pole time, and that pole time is sure to be faster this year compared to last year. After the free practice session, everyone's had a few hours to get themselves ready for this session. And the one thing that's really interesting, speaking to some of the riders in the WCR, they've all said the same thing. They need to be ready to go straight from the outset and be at the end of pit lane, be in the group from the get-go, because last time out in Assen, a few riders felt like they were kind of stuck in no man's land throughout the course of that session of just not quite being in the right place to use a toe. If you don't have a toe from turn 10 to turn 11, you got no chance of a fast lap.
Yeah, it'll be quite interesting to see what Beatriz Nela does, the first-time race winner last time out at Assen, because she, in the Superpole session, went out by herself and just kept turning out the laps. However, she does know this place from last year, unlike Assen, so she might play her cards differently, as you said. She might be out there in the group, she might be leading it, because the riders will want to tag onto the back of her or Herrera, who were the top two in the session this morning. There we see the championship leader, 45 points, a second place last time out and first. We spoke to her yesterday for a feature interview, and she couldn't quite let that second place go. She felt like she was a rightful winner of it, so to speak, but she managed to show her cards on the Sunday. First time race winner, first time she's ever stood in the top step of the podium here in World WCR, and she timed it to absolute perfection with this overtake on Herrera going towards the last chicane. And really, Maria had no issue or had no answer coming back against Nela.
Yeah, we saw that Beatriz was able to just be the fastest rider in race 2, claim that race victory. It was a smart ride by her to be able to get the win, and she learned the lessons from race 1. Race 1, she exceeded the track limits on the last lap through the chicane, and the one thing in Assen is we know that that's going to be a penalty, so it was fair cop really for her to lose that race win or the chance of that race win. But herself and Maria Herrera, they were the class of the field last time out. But what was interesting is we did have other riders up there. Sarah Sanchez was very fast throughout. The one rider that really impressed me was Avalon Lewis, and for Avalon on the number 21 machine, she was able to be in that lead group in both races, really strong and fast and consistent. A crash on that last lap cost her a lot of points though.
Yeah, Avalon Lewis made her debut in World WCR here last year at Cremona. Managed to pick up a P5 in race 2 last year, so really good form around this circuit. And of course she was running in 4th place with leading group, more importantly, in Assen, and she seems to be a rider that we can expect to be fighting at the front throughout the year.
Yeah, we saw Av last year have a really strong Cremona weekend. She qualified on the second row of the grid, ran inside the top 5, had a top 5 finish in 4th in race 1 and then a non-score in race 2 of the crash. But for her, she's been very consistent since she's jumped onto the WCR grid to be able to show what she can do, and that's the key for riders making that step.
Yeah, it really is indeed, and we'll expect to see a few riders maybe making a step from Assen onwards. Speaking to a few of them over the course of yesterday, and they seem to enjoy this track a little bit more. Assen was really quite difficult for a few of them that had never been there before because it's a difficult circuit to learn. However, Cremona is a lot smaller, a lot easier, and they have done tests here as well.
This is interesting as well to see the riders that immediately jumped out of pit lane. We saw Lucy Michelle, we saw Mal Dobbs, Taylor Ralph, all the first riders out of the pits. They want to be in a position to be able to control their Superpole session. If you're at the back of a group, you have to fight your way through it. If you're at the front of the group, you've got an extra couple of laps to try and latch on to the back of someone to give yourself that opportunity to set a fast time. So this is a strategy for these riders to make sure that they've put themselves out there at the right time.
We've got a good marker at the front of this group with Mallory Dobbs on the number 14 machine. The US rider just leading the way. There is Adela, the Czech rider, on the number 19. Not seen too much of her so far this season, but she's another rider that potentially could be expecting something from this end of the number 19 pink and black machine. The number 33 part of this group as well. That is Lou on the back, and she's another rider that's one of the tallest in the field.
Just for Adela as well, it's interesting for the number 19 because last year she finished the season quite strongly. She had a couple of top 10 finishes in those final rounds of the year, and I think for Adela, if you look at what she did in Estoril with those 2 top 10 finishes, it showed some potential. And then the opening round of the year was a lot more difficult for her, and she found herself scoring points in race 1, out of the points in race 2, but in and around that P14, 15, 16 battle throughout. So for her, it's about giving yourself that opportunity to be able to make that step to give yourself the chance to score some decent points. But it is difficult to be able to do that. This field, with everyone out there on the same bikes, if you qualify badly, you get in the wrong group in the race and you give up too much ground. You really do need to qualify in the front couple of rows of the grid to give yourself the chance to go with those leaders in the early stages. If you qualify on the 4th or 5th row of the grid, you stay in that mid-pack no matter what.
It's not just about the qualifying, it's also this race start as well. We saw from Roberta Pontiani last event in Assen. She qualified quite well in the second row of the grid, but then she dropped back early on and really had to fight forward. So they'll be hoping that the qualifying goes well, and of course the race start goes well also. Number 20 just saw on screen there, that was Natalia Rivera on the GRT Yamaha World WCR machine, as we watch Maria Herrera come out of pit lane, and she picked up a race victory here last year. But quite importantly for the championship, she was involved in that incident with Sarah Sanchez in the final corner, or the final lap of last year's race, and it really did give her an uphill battle towards the end of the season.
Yeah, it made it basically impossible for her to be able to come out on top up against Ana Carrasco. And for Maria, that was the story of her season. There was only 3 races she didn't finish on the podium, and 2 of them were retirements due to crashes, and then another was just finishing in 4th. And she missed out on having that consistency that Ana Carrasco had last year. For Herrera, she's very motivated to put the record right this year and win this championship, and she's still as focused as ever on Ana Carrasco, because the comments in the press this week have all been based around Ana, and it's been interesting to see that from Maria, because she needs to focus on doing her job.
Yeah, and quite interestingly, Maria has won 7 races in World WCR from 14, so that's a 50% strike rate. And Maria, no wonder she has a target on the back, but Braves with Nela, she'll be another rider with a target on her back. And from what we've seen in Athens so far this weekend, it seems to be a 2-horse race so far in the early stages of this championship, as we watch the brand new World WCR race winner exit pit lane. And we saw this in Assen. She was happy to do this all by herself.
Just to say as well, Lucy Michel's fastest lap time on her first stint, a 43.1 on her first flying lap. That's only a 10th of a second off the time she did this morning. So she is immediately down to the same pace she had in the free practice session. Obviously track conditions are a little bit different. It's gotten to be almost 50 degrees now. It was around about 35 degrees when the WCR riders were out on track this morning. So you're having to feel your way around and understand what's happening out there. But the times are only going to get faster and faster. And certainly you can see here for Avalon Lewis just making her way around. She's on course to move up to the top of the timesheets. Chloe Jones on the number 15 bike just behind her as well. Worth keeping an eye on Chloe's time. She's a few tenths of a second faster as well. And Chloe's been really impressive since she jumped onto the WCR grid at the end of last season, and she's been able to come in again at the opening round of the year in Assen and show herself really competitively, because she was able to qualify on the 3rd row of the grid, finish both races inside the top 7. It's about making that small step to go with the leaders in the early stages, and then you're able to come away with, instead of a 6th and a 7th in Assen, maybe a 4th and a 5th.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to remember, it's only her 3rd World WCR race weekend this weekend, and she has, as you quite rightly said, shown herself really well. She's first, 2nd for the first 3 attempts at World WCR, 7th in race 2 in Assen. However, she is there and around that mid-pack, just picking up those important points and learning, which is quite important.
Yeah, that's the one thing in this class, is that we want to see the riders that are able to jump in and immediately be competitive. We know how good Ana Carrasco and Maria Herrera were last year. That gave us a good yardstick to judge the likes of Sarah Sanchez. Sanchez has come in, she's won races, she's been a contender all the way through since WCR started, so we know she's up at that high level. Beatrice Neal has made a big step forward in the second half of last year and into this year as well, so we know how good she is. And then you're waiting to see who else is able to consistently go with them.
Yeah, it'll be quite interesting to see indeed, and we just see the big steps coming forward from all the riders throughout the grid. There's Astrid Madrigal. She picked up a couple of top 10s last time at Assen, another rider that ended the season strongly last year and continued that form this year, as Maria's just went and set herself a brand new all-time lap record on her first flying lap on a Friday in Superpole.
Yeah, first flying lap, she's immediately down into the low 40s there with a 40.4. What's interesting is a few other riders were able to find time compared to where they had been, and it looks like Sarah Sanchez might have just had a lap time deleted as well. Got a crasher down there, and that looks to me like Jess Howden down there.
Yeah, it's such a shame for Jess Howden. She looked quite confident yesterday, quietly confident yesterday when speaking to her, and such a shame that she's gone down there. Not quite sure which corner that was. Turn 2 for the number 52 that she's gone down.
Howden's been able to put in a lap time already. She's up there 10th fastest with a 43.1. So it's actually not that bad of a lap time to come in straight away, just compared to the free practice sessions. That would have been the 11th fastest time. So there are going to be some riders that just won't go faster than that. So Howden's fall down the grid might be by a row or two, but she needs to get that bike back to the pits and make sure that she's able to get back out in this session.
It's such an important point to get a banker lap in, because anything can happen in the session.
This is what's quite important as well. You could see there with Taylor Ralph coming through. Taylor up there 3rd fastest. Obviously after the crash for Howden, we'll wait and see what happens to these lap times if anyone went through yellow flags. But what we saw behind her was Mal Dobbs, the number 14, the first rider out of the pits, staying with that leading group of riders, and then Dobbs up there currently on the 3rd row of the grid. So her strategy to leave the pits early has paid off, because she's been able to lap there with some of the faster riders and give herself the chance of being up inside the top 10.
Yeah, it's quite good to get yourself a good marker just in front of you as we watch Sarah Sanchez, a rider that caused us some trouble last year in race number 2. However, she'll be hoping for a good battle this weekend. Personal best for Sarah Sanchez, up to 5th spot. She goes on the number 64. Herrera sets a new all-time lap record at 0.6 of a second faster than she went this morning, and of course half a second faster than the old all-time lap record. So 2 laps in a row, 2 new all-time lap records, and just a few moments behind her, Roberta Ponziani picked up her sole podium last year after all of that melee with Herrera and Sanchez in the final lap of race number 2. However, Ponziani, she's got a lot of family here this weekend, a lot of friends as well, as we've seen in the paddock, and she'll be hoping to maybe go a step higher on the podium as she did last year. Maybe a race victory at home would be nice.
Yeah, for Roberta, I think it'll be a step too much to do that, but the fact that she made her podium here last year gives her a lot of encouragement. She was always up inside the top 5 last season. The whole way through the campaign, she was up inside the top 5. She had one non-score at Donington in the second race. Everything else, she was really competitive, but always seemed to be in that 4th or 5th position. That podium, you hope, gives her the confidence to kick on, to win those battles, to put yourself back on the podium on a more regular basis. But to make the step to win a race, that's a big step to make. And we saw in Assen again for her, it was a 5th and a 4th, so the continuation of what we've seen from her really over last season and into this year. But the big reason for that was she qualified on the 3rd row of the grid. She needs to qualify that a little bit further up the field, and she's done a good job in this session to put herself up there on the 2nd row right now.
Yeah, as we spoke about in Assen, she needs to work on her starts as well, because she was dropping back far too much and having to fight back up. She managed to finish in 5th and 4th in both races, but just leaving her a little step too much to try and fight back. Another rider that's shown brilliantly in this session is Astrid Madrigal on the number 83 machine, the Mexican rider, well and truly inside the top 3 for the time being on the 1st row of the grid. If she remains there, that'll be her best qualifying in World WCR.
Yeah, we saw last year a couple of times she qualified on the 3rd row of the grid. Again, in the opening round of the year, we saw that she's made a step forward compared to last year, but she came away with 2 8th place finishes. So again, you're in that second group, but you're at the front of that second group. Last year, she seemed to be a little bit further back in that second group. So it's really important for her to give herself that opportunity to qualify a bit better and then see if you're able to have a strong result.
Yeah, absolutely. Qualifying is key here. Beatriz Nela is well on course for the top spot at the time being, coming through sector number 2. Dropped off a little bit. She was fastest in sector number 1 on the current lap. Sector number 2, she's 400ths off Maria Herrera's new all-time lap record. She's on course to go 2nd for the time being. We'll watch her as she comes through split number 3 anytime now. And as she comes to the end of the lap, she's now dropped another 0.4 of a second, so she's losing a bit of time in sector 3 as Nela.
What's interesting is Maria Herrera isn't the fastest rider in sector 3. She is in sector 1, 2 and 4, but it's Roberta Ponziani that's actually faster in that 3rd sector. So an area of the track where Maria needs to find just a few hundredths of a second to be fastest, but it does show that some of the other riders are able to be pretty competitive as well.
Yeah, indeed. I wonder if maybe it's just a long straight and Ponziani's maybe just getting a bit of a slipstream while Maria did her lap on her own. As we see Naila come across the line. That's an important lap from Bertha with Naila. Front row of the grid, half a second off, more importantly, but at least she's on the front row, but she'll be a little bit worried about the time that she's given away to Herrera on that lap, but she'll be looking to do what she did in Assen, just keep building towards the end of the session.
Yeah, all that time being lost in Sector 3, though, so again, it's another one of those ones where picking up the toe at the right place costs you about a half second if you don't have it. So we'll see what Naila's able to do on her next lap if she gets someone to work with. Now that we're halfway through the session, this is where you do need to find a draft partner. Who's going to give you that opportunity to open a little bit of a window for you to find that free time, because it is free lap time if you get that slipstream.
Yeah, it is indeed. And Natalia Rivera, she's on screen now. Well, she was on screen for a second, but she's already up inside the top 12 and 11th spot as we're looking at Lucy Bodicel on the number 17 machine, currently sitting in 15th spot for the time being, 3.6 seconds off the all-time lap record set by Maria Herrera about 7 minutes ago. So some of these riders just finding the groove again after being off for a couple of weeks, but just trying to find the form that we had in testing here.
Yeah, just looking at the times as well, it looks like Jess Howden's had her lap time deleted incidentally, so Jess currently 25th on the grid, so we'll wait and see if Jess is able to get herself back out on track. But as it is for Howden, that crash has cost her an awful lot now.
It has indeed, and Madrigal further back, continuing on that good showing that we saw a couple of laps ago. 2 tenths off at the third sector. That would put her into third for the time being. Can she hold that on through sector number 2? If it's 2 tenths off Maria, if she comes across the line any moment now, that will put her up to second. As we see Bodicel, she's claimed 2 more positions. She's gone from 30th up to second as we're back with Roberta Ponziani coming through the final corner. And I think we have Madrigal following Maria Herrera just behind it. Ponziani, a new lap time, she goes up to second, or stays second, with Madrigal finding at her personal best. She is now a 10th and a bit off Maria Herrera. So the starting close in on Herrera just ever so slightly, as Maria Herrera is part of that group that we've just cut away from. Back to Paquita Ruiz on the number 46 machine. The Spanish rider, the Catalan rider, incidentally, picked up a P6, 2 P6s here last year. Hasn't finished outside the top 6, or only finished outside the top 6 once in her last 10 outings. So she really is somebody who has found a good bit of form within the mid-pack. So as we watch coming through the corner on towards the back straight, 1.5 seconds off, so not going to be an improvement on this lap so far. Carreño further back on the number 99. Riders just finding some improvements as they continue to tick off these laps with 11 minutes to go of this session, as we're watching number 46 coming through the final complex of corners, where we have seen a little bit of kerfuffle on the final lap of race 2 last year, but the rider we want to keep an eye on is the number 99. A few moments further back as she comes to sector number 3. Will the number 99 improve? 1.9 seconds she is off. She can improve 4 places up towards 13th.
Yeah, the rider we probably need to keep an eye on is Sarah Sanchez, because there's half a second between Maria Herrera fastest, Beatrice Naila in 4th fastest. There's another second back to Sanchez, and that next group of a second takes you all the way down to 12th as well. So for Sanchez, she's on course for her personal best. This is the number 64, and we'll see what she can do on her run to the line. And she finds a few tenths of a second, but just losing a lot of time in each sector there, really. A third of a second in sector 1, quarter of a second in sector 2, 4 tenths of a second in sector 3, and then it was another 4 tenths in that final sector. So that's where her pace is right now, but all it takes is one rider to catch at the right time, and suddenly you're able to make that bit of a jump. So we'll see if she's able to do that. As it is, her 41.7 in all likelihood is going to be good enough for top 3 rows of the grid, but she needs to be a little bit closer to the pace.
So plenty of time for improvements, just under 10 minutes remaining. Chloe Jones on a good lap, the rider that has finished inside the top 7 in 4 of her outings so far in World WCR. 2 tenths off is split number 1, but she is part of this pack, so she might lose some time in the middle here, just up behind Roberta Ponziani, with a couple of riders outside wide, and yeah, she's dropped off 7 tenths in sector 2.
She's half a second slower in sector 2 than she was on her personal best as well, so for her, she's lost too much ground in that sector, but we'll wait and see if she's able to just keep herself in this group for her next lap, and then she gives herself the chance to maybe have a slipstream down the start-finish straight, and then put yourself in a position to maybe pick up another one down the back straight next time around.
She's got a good marker just in front of her. Roberta Ponziani currently sitting in second on the number 96 machine, and Chloe Jones is not one for sitting back, already drafting past the Italian, and she's tagged onto the back of Perenno, the number 99. So she's still pushing on in this lap, even though she has 2.1 seconds off. So I think she's just trying to get herself into the groove for the flying lap as she comes around the final corner. Not much improvements going on. Michelle, just further back, currently sitting in 10th. She's on for an improvement at the time being on the number 16 machine. Carreño on the number 13. She comes across the line. No improvement there. So as we come towards the end of this session, there's not too much improvements, but we are still to watch the thunder before the storm, and within the last 5 minutes. So Michelle comes through the final complex of corners. 8 minutes to go on the number 16 machine as we look at the timing monitor, and I think you've spotted something, Steve.
Well, you can see just as she's making her way through the flip-flops there at the end of the lap, just cruising around on this lap now, lost a lot of time there in sector 3. But we're 8 minutes left in the session, so enough time for 5 laps now for Lucy to try and set something. But her problem is she's on her own and out on track. The next rider in front of her is, it looks like it's Samoa's out there on track in front of her, and there's round about 3 corners to make up. So she's going to do her times on her own for this session, it looks like.
Yeah, maybe it'd be best of her to just set up for a lap, take stock, and then potentially find a rider. One of the fast riders coming out of pit lane, like Maria Herrera. She's currently in the pits at the moment. Some changes to the bike, and then she'll get cracking on in the next few minutes.
In these sessions, typically riders just come back into the pits, see where they're losing time, but more than anything, you're trying to see who else is in pit lane. Who can you leave pit lane with to follow through the course of this lap? You can see Avalon Biddle there on the number 21 machine, Avalon Lewis, as her married name is. And for Av, again, you can see there just putting herself in a position to make sure she leaves the pits at the right time with the right people. And she's beside Beatrice Naylor there in the pit box.
It's quite interesting having the top 2 in the championship equal on points. Maria Herrera and Beatrice Naylor in the pit. Will there be some gamesmanship going on here? One waiting for the other to come out, as we now have the riders exiting pit lane. Naylor's left the pit lane on the number 36, just in front of the 94 of Beatrice Barbera on the 94 machine, the Italian rider. She's currently sitting all the way down in 23rd for the time being. So some improvements coming from the Italian potentially in the next few moments. Here's Michelle once again, the number 16. Improvements on this lap potentially, yes, up 2 spots on to the 3rd row of the grid, the middle of the 3rd row and towards 8th. So she found some time in that final sector, and she's now found herself in the middle of the 3rd row with just over 6 minutes remaining. So as we see some of the faster riders coming out of the pit box and getting themselves ready for their flying lap. It's currently Herrera leading the way, only a 10th and a half in front of Ponziani, and just under 2 tenths back is Astrid Madrigal, currently on course for her first ever front row start, the Mexican rider on the number 83 machine.
Yeah, for Madrigal as well on the 83. She's the fastest rider of all in that final sector, so shows that her bike's working well at the end of the lap, as we see Jamie Hanks Elliott now in the 76 trying to make her way through for another lap. For Hanks Elliott, she's down there in 20th position right now, just about to start the first flying lap of this final stint for her. We'll see if she's able to make a bit of a step forward from that.
Yeah, she'll be home to push on quite a bit. Well, Hanks Elliott on the number 76 machine, and for Hanks Elliott, 17th the last time out in the Superpole session in Assen, so a couple of places behind that she'll be hoping for an improvement. Madalena Simores on the number 22 machine, reading that number in honour of Anna Carrasco, her racing hero, and hoping to do the number 22 proud here this weekend. Well, we're back with the championship leader, number 36, Beatrice Naylor on her flying lap, but was a little bit mired just behind, I think it might have been Bondi, no, it was Mallory Dobbs. I saw the number 4, just didn't quite catch the number 1 on the front of that machine, so Naylor's managed to get through, but lost a bit of time in sector number 1, so this lap will be gone. However, she'll just push herself forward and try and get the next lap, and then a couple of laps after that to push on for some lap time. She looks over her shoulder. So she's scrapping this lap, and she'll just build for the next one. Looking further down the order, Sarah Sanchez, she's on a quick lap. She is 7 tenths of a second off through sector number 3. And she comes across the line at 1:41.7. Doesn't improve in place, but it improves in lap time. So she's now 1.2 seconds off Maria Herrera. So Sarah Sanchez is finding some time, and there's still time to be found with just over 4 minutes remaining.
Sanchez losing a second in the second half of that lap, and just looking at where she is out on track, she's on her own. So she doesn't have a toe down that back straight, and she's not going to find a toe in the final 4 minutes unless someone comes out of the pits. But for her, that means it's really difficult now to try and make an improvement from that second row of the grid.
Yeah, it really will be quite tough for anybody if they don't have the toe. However, the one that is finding time is Maria Herrera through split number 1, 7 thousandths of a second up on her own all-time lap record.
Yeah, and for Herrera, she's got a few riders in front of her. We saw when she was in the pits, her teammate Roberto Pontiani was in there as well. So you'd imagine that they're out on track together, and then it's just a question of who else is out there with them.
Yeah, there'll be some teammateship going on through...
It looks like it's Madrigal. Just looking at the sector times as well, they all came through together. So it looks like it's Herrera, Pontiani, and Madrigal all there together.
Yeah, the top 3 from the session so far currently on track together with just over 3 minutes remaining. Here we are with the top 3, and as Pontiani is punching the hole in the air as they come through the turn number 10 on towards the back straight. Madrigal in the middle of this and Herrera on the back.
Let's have a look at this for Herrera. She's a tenth of a second down on her fastest time, but she suddenly got a slipstream to pick up on the way in front. There's yellow flags out down there we saw on the LED boards, and that's Sarah Sanchez that's gone down at turn 11.
Well, turn 11 is not the best friend of Sarah Sanchez at Cremona, but thankfully we did see her up and on her feet. Currently sitting in 5th spot with yellow flags out. That could play into her advantage.
You can see the craftiness for Herrera, though. She's kept herself at the back of this group.
She has indeed, yeah, backing off just ever so slightly. When she saw those yellow flags, she knew that the time, or the lap time was up 1.2 seconds. She lost in that, but as you quite rightly pointed out, Steve, setting up and just playing it clever, as this group are now currently catching a couple of riders just in front of them as they come through the first sector. That's the number 99 and 32 just in front of the top 3 currently in this Superpole session. Here we go, we got a replay. Just runs off at turn number 11 and tried to keep it up, but maybe just a bit too much speed, and down goes Sarah Sanchez and does a bit of a belly flop on top of the bike. However, it was a slow crash, and thankfully she was back on her feet.
Yeah, it's a bit of a side crash, that one. And for Sanchez, you can see the bike's been wheeled away, and that's her session finished. But one of those ones where she's ran in a little bit hot. She tries to just run through the gravel trap, and just the gravel trap catches her out a little bit there. You can see Avalon Lewis moves up to 6th fastest now. Again, we have to wait and see whether or not the yellow flags had already come in. We saw that the marshals were moving the bike, so we'll wait and see if yellows were out for that. But for Lewis, she's put in a decent lap time there to go on to that second row of the grid.
So with just over 1 minute to go, we're back with Maria Herrera. She is 200 down at split number 2. She comes through the 3rd sector. She's got a great slipstream here from Pontiani and Astrid Madrigal, and she's up by 200ths of a second as she blasts past number 83 in towards turn number 11, where we just saw Sarah Sanchez go down. But she's got some traffic on this fastest lap as we come into the final complex, and Madrigal fights back on the number 83. A little bit feisty is Madrigal here in this Superpole session. She wants to get the best slipstream as she can as to start the final lap of this Superpole session here at Cremona.
Yeah, and you can see there for Madrigal, she was making sure she could still set a lap time there, and it was actually a second slower than she's gone. But it's almost just about making sure that you've let Maria know that you're not going to just cede positions to her, whether it's in the Superpole session or not. That would have annoyed Herrera, because she'd done the hard work, she got herself up at that 3rd split, but then ends up now having to deal with Madrigal for the opening half of this lap as well. As you can see, Chloe Jones there up onto the 3rd row of the grid in 7th spot. So another really good effort there from Chloe. She qualified 7th at the Dutch round as well, so good consistency.
Yeah, she's got a good marker just in front of her. That's Paquita Ruiz on the 46. She's currently sitting in 10th spot at the moment. And we've got a lap time cancelled for the number 4. That was because of the yellow flags at turn 11 for Sarah Sanchez, as this group aren't improving their lap times. Maria Herrera is 1.7 seconds off, so there looks like there'll be no improvement for the top 3. So the top 3 on the grid, the first few rows look like they're set in stone. Only a couple of riders further down improving. One of those riders is on screen. That is Paquita Ruiz, 0.8 of a second off at split 2. Still got Chloe Jones hot on her heels, but she's 0.8 of a second down at the second split. We'll keep an eye on what Ruth can do as she comes on towards the back straight through turn number 10. However, she, quite importantly, doesn't have anyone in front of her to punch a hole in the air.
Yeah, she's on course for personal bests in those first 2 sectors, but not on course to actually improve on her position. She's 2 seconds off the pace, 2.1 seconds off the pace there in 10th position. Only needs to find a 10th of a second to move ahead of Lucy Michelle. So we'll see if she's able to find something now in this final sector to give her that opportunity. She's 1.3 seconds off through these 3 splits, so maybe she'll be able just to move herself up onto that 3rd row of the grid.
Yeah, but quite an important one for Ruth as she comes through the final corner on towards the home straight. Checkered flag is waving for the session over. Can Ruth move up on towards the 3rd row? Yes, she can. The outside of the 3rd row of the grid. 1.7 seconds off, but that's a great effort there from the number 46, with Bondi moving in towards 12th as Bodicel on the 17 comes through the final corner, the back to final corner here at Cremona. Across the line we go for the number 17. Will it be an improvement? Yes, up by 2 places onto the front of the 5th row of the grid in 13th spot. So great effort there from the number 17 towards the end of the session. However, it is Maria Herrera that leads the way for the 2nd time in 2025, as we've seen Sonia Lloyd go down at turn 2. So I'm not sure if that was just after a checkered flag, potentially, that Lloyd has gone down. It looks like it might have.
Yeah, it looks like it's just at the end of the session there and the checkered flag already out. So that's a bit of a mistake there for Sonia, but for her, it's still about trying to just learn what you can now over in Europe for the first time full time, and this is her crash just at the back on 32. Very strange crash. That
maybe grabbed a bit too much front brake, maybe a bit too heavy on the front brake and just locked the front, or potentially a technical issue there, but very strange there. But thankfully she was able to walk away. Yeah,
that just looked really weird for her there, and cruising as well.
Yes.
At the end of the session, so she's already finished her session and didn't look like she was trying to push on to learn anything, so just looks like something's gone wrong there for her on the bike, because that's a very unusual crash.
Yeah, nothing's gone wrong, however, for the joint championship leader, the number 6, Maria Herrera. Pole position for race 1 tomorrow here at Cremona on Saturday, ahead of her teammate Roberta Ponziani. Great effort there from the Italian rider to be only a 10th and a bit off Maria Herrera, and Roberta Ponziani putting herself in prime position to repeat her podium here in race number 2 from last year. And just ahead of, or just behind the Clint Forward Racing squad duo, we have Astrid Madrigal on the 83, who comes into pits behind the top 2. The Mexican rider, her best qualifying here in World WCR, and she had a good slipstream and a good marker in front of her from Ponziani throughout most of the session. However, it's one thing having the marker, it's another thing to be able to push on and do the lap as well. And with Astrid Madrigal, a good effort in Assen, top 8 finish for her, and she just used that confidence to push on even more in Cremona ahead of the races on Saturday and Sunday. So the top 3, as you were, Herrera, Ponziani, Madrigal. Behind them, your championship leader and first-time race winner last time out at Assen, Beatrice Naylor. She was half a second off Herrera, however, she'll be quite happy to go from the front of the 2nd row. The top 2 rows are quite important here in World WCR. Next to her is Sarah Sanchez, who we saw crash at turn number 11 within the last 5 minutes. And then Avalon Lewis, late in the session, managed to move up towards the outside of the 2nd row of the grid. Chloe Jones, she'll go from 7th, as she did it at Assen, ahead of Taylor Relf and Paquita Ruiz, rounding out the 3rd row of the grid, with Michelle, Dobbs, Bondi, Bodicel, Rivera and Carreño rounding out the top 15. However, everyone is still chasing the number 6 here at Cremona. She topped free practice this morning, she topped testing, and she topped Superpole here for World WCR. The Superpole session after 25 minutes, and the number 6 has put herself in prime position to repeat her race 1 efforts last year, and she'll be hoping to make it double, unlike she did in 2024, through no fault of her own. However, it'll be something that she'll be hoping to put to bed here at Cremona and kick on in the championship for round number 3 in a few weeks' time. So we'll head down towards Parc Fermé, and Alvaro is down there with her pole sitter.
Maria, your second pole position of the season. Amazing way to start the Italian round here at Cremona.
Yes, I'm very happy because I knew this track all can do the pole position or going fast. So I'm very happy to do the pole position. It was a pity because my fastest lap was cancelled about one crash. So I'm happy with the pole position and thank you to my team.
Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Maria Herrera, pole position for race 1 here tomorrow and feeling confident ahead of what will be the 12-lapper at Cremona. So to recap the results, it is Maria Herrera leading the way from pole position ahead of her teammate Roberta Ponziani, who picked up her first podium last year. Astrid Madrigal running at the front row for the first time here in World WCR ahead of Beatriz Nela, Sarah Sanchez and Avalon Lewis. Further back down we've got Jones, Ralph and Reith running at the third row of the grid. Mallory Dobb just missing out in the top 10 now. Bondi, Bodicel, Rivera and Carreño. And then further back we had Sonia Lloyd, who had a late crash after the checkered flag, Belly Fuller, Beatriz Barbera, Madeline Samoes and Jessica Howden, who had her lap time deleted after she had a crash at turn number 2. So that is World WCR Superpole done and dusted and put into the history books with Maria Herrera taking pole position for race 1 here on Saturday. We have 12 laps of World WCR coming our way with lights out at 12:45 local time with another last lap battle potentially like at Assen on the cards. So join us tomorrow to find out.